Okay, we're about ready to get back to business with none other than getting busy with the busy Tim Owens.
Jokes that only we could get. Good grief. All right, perfect. So that, what Jim just talked about was sort of a broad overview. And then what I want to do now is start to really deep dive specifically into WHMCS and WHM. Because I feel like most of us are comfortable in WordPress, and if you've already been managing your system, you're probably doing a lot of switching users, getting into their cPanel, but WHMCS might be a whole new world for you. Like there have been times, I think, even in training where I don't even focus all that much on it, and I'm changing a lot of that now because there is a lot of functionality in there. And then WHM as well, sort of that higher level overview sitting on top of those actual cPanel accounts. So I want to go in depth into more of those tools that are available in there, because there is a lot of information in different places. A lot of it's duplicated. And so you'll find logging into cPanel, you might find in multiple places, where to find usernames and all that. But there's different places to find that kind of stuff. So this is the homepage of WHMCS. When you first log in, you'll see things like pending orders. And like Jim mentioned, you see a lot of billing information that really just doesn't apply unless there's paid domain registrations happening in there or things like that. So the first thing I want to look at is clients. And so from that drop-down menu, I'm going to go to View Search Clients. One thing to note about WHMCS is you're going to have way more clients than actual users in your system. Like from day one, because anybody who logs into your WordPress install, a client account is created in here. It's an empty one. They have no products, they have no information or anything, but there's an empty client account. And that's because in the WordPress system, when they first log in order to embed that sign up form, we're sort of doing a single sign on with WHMCS. So it's creating a client account for them and logging them in so that those two are connected. So what you'll have in here are people that have logged in, like Edwin here, but under services, 0, 0. So this means 0 products, 0 domains. You'll have a lot of those, most likely, because you'll have people logging in with single sign-on. Your entire campus has the ability to log in, but A, you might have restricted the ability to actually sign up for a domain, or B, you'll just have people who go to do something, and then as soon as they get to sign up, they're like, I'm not ready yet. Like I saw that domain form and I'm like, I just actually don't want to do that just yet. And so you'll have quite a few users like that. And this is where there's usually a cron job that will run regularly. A cron job just runs like every night and says, do they have any accounts? If not, set their status to inactive. So this status field refers to that. Do they have any active products in their account? If you were to terminate someone's account the next time that thing ran, it would push them back to inactive. So that's an example of that. And so you'll have a lot more here, 1,940. There are not over almost 2,000 accounts on state use server. There's only a couple hundred. You can see it gives some basic information, but clicking on a specific ID number in here, and this is an interface that you'll see a lot in WHMCS, is this sort of tabular view like this. And so clicking on the ID number actually takes you into that person's account. It's a little weird, but let's go into Jim's to go back to his. As Jim mentioned, the first page just has a lot of overview information about their profile. So you have their contact information here, but there's some interesting things in here as well. One thing is that I could see the last time that they logged in. And so we've got a date and time stamp there. We can see their IP address. That is useful for us, actually. We use that a lot with our external clients when they logged in, to see like if they're on a wireless network and it's blocked for some reason. So if they have an IP address here, I'll look and see like if they're contacting me and this has been updated that day, I might reasonably be able to guess, well, let me just double check that IP address rather than asking them what is their IP to, unblock them for a firewall or something like that. So that's just some useful information here when they signed up, basic information like that. You can see a list of most recent emails. I think this shows like 5 by default, something like that. So if they have been getting a lot of emails for whatever reason, and like I said, WHMCS and Domain of One's Own doesn't send a whole lot. It sends the welcome email, but beyond that, we've turned most of it off because it's things like domain renewal reminders, or your account has been suspended, a lot more automated stuff. This is hosting automation software, but in Domain of One's Own, beyond the actual provisioning step, there's not a whole lot of automation happening in the background because they're free accounts that live until you decide that they shouldn't. So, but you'll be able to see the recent emails there, and you can actually click right in here to open one of those up. So that's an actual link that will open up the actual email as well. So a quick way to get to that. View orders is useful. Jim mentioned, let's say an order didn't go through for some reason. If I clicked view orders here, it's going to come to a page that will actually show me the domain that they signed up for, when they signed up for it. And I would actually see here, for example, it would say setting up a username, password, which server it's going on, that it would be incomplete right here. And if I tried to accept this, it would try again to provision that account. So if they're trying to log in and they're getting a blank white screen or something, a good thing to check is, did this order go through? And it's a little misleading because the status here says pending, but this worked. Like, this account got set up, Jim's cPanel was embedding, and everything was fine. It's just pending because it hasn't been accepted yet. It's pretty common, even on Reclaim Hosting on our main WHMCS install, that we don't get around to accepting orders for a while. So sometimes you'll have pending orders just sitting there. It's not hurting anything. However, if it's pending and here you don't, so this one, it's a little hard to see because I don't have an example that didn't go through for some reason. But you would see down here that it was trying to provision an account and it didn't work. And if I hit accept, it would actually come up with whatever error message that we ran into. Some errors that I've seen before are like cPanel does not allow any domains that start with the word test. That's a popular thing for people who are testing out systems to use, is test domain dot whatever for your subdomain. And cPanel balks at that. They don't like the word test to be the first word. It's just one of their rules. And so they'll go to sign up. Well, WHMCS doesn't have that rule. They don't really care. And so WHMCS will try to process it through, and then they'll get a white screen. WHMCS will just be sitting here with a pending order that hasn't gone through. But if you hit accept order, you get a nice error message up here that says, system account test not allowed, invalid username, something like that. And so it gives you a little bit more information to go on. I mentioned earlier, I've seen a similar issue like with passwords. If the automatic password that WHMCS generated wasn't secure enough for some reason. So that gives us a lot of information in there. Yeah.
Big thing now.
Sure, which is only going to apply for domain registrations. But yeah, if any of the contact information isn't correct enough for a domain registration to go through, like they're very careful about zip codes matching states and all this kind of stuff. And so it's got to be, really perfect. But this will give you a lot more information. So if you have someone who it's not embedding, the first thing to check is, did their order go through? Go up into their order, try to accept it, see if you get any error messages there. If it went through and the account's actually created, then it could be something else. It could be a password issue or something not syncing properly. So. Jam your laptop. Struggle button. Or maybe it's the internet. Who knows?
I wouldn't judge that.
No, sorry. It's a personal subject. So Jim mentioned emails going out, and I'm going to show you some templates that can be created in the system. But this is a quick way to send emails. You can actually even just send emails to them directly from within WHMCS if you want to. I don't know why you wouldn't want to use it from your own client, but maybe you want it to be tracked within the system. That would be a good reason to. If you want it to actually show up down here, communications that you've had with the user, it's only going to show the outgoing stuff. If they respond, it might go to your support address or whatever is set up in the system. But you can absolutely click go on a new message, and it'll pull up basically a dummied down webmail version of creating an email. So, and we'll look at some other stuff. There are ways in WHMCS where you can send mass mail out to all of your accounts. And you can filter that by criteria. So you can say all accounts that are active, obviously, versus everybody that's logged in and that kind of thing. So, or everybody that's got a top level domain registration, or what have you. let's go right through on some of the profile stuff. So summary, profile just has contact information and contacts isn't used at all. Products Jim mentioned, but I'll look at a couple things in detail. So pretty much everybody in this room has a single server. So you'll just see one in here, the date that they registered their domain. The FTP information is really important. It's in there. It's encrypted in the database, but this is the actual account information. And so you can test those credentials. This is sometimes what we see if cPanel's not embedding properly. You want to make sure WHMCS has the right information to be able to embed cPanel, because it's basically trying to remotely authenticate that user. And so you want to make sure things are matching up in the system, essentially. And so that we'll do that. Or if somebody reaches out and needs FTP information, you can resend that email. You could also look in here and just get their information and do some testing directly on your own with an FTP client, something like that. Jim mentioned some of these module commands. These go directly to WHM to do various things. So it's kind of weird, but let's say I wanted to change Jim's FTP account. He emails me and goes, I don't know what the hell that is. Like, give me a break. Like this generated thing, can you please make it Jim Groom is awesome? And you're like, that's not really a secure password, but whatever, I'll allow it.
It's a good.
It's a great one. So let's say I went there and I saved those changes. Your changes have been saved. That did not change the password. This seems really weird, but this is nothing but a database. This is an entry in their database saying what that account should be, but it hasn't communicated that with cPanel. So, you know, it seems completely counterintuitive, but until I hit this change password button here, that's going to actually send the change password command and take whatever is in this field and actually change the password on the server. So WHMCS acts a little weird in that regard because it's really more of a client management software and a database that holds all of this information, but it does need to communicate back and forth with the server. And there's some times where you feel like you have to do more than one step to do various things. Service password changed successfully. Now that is the new FTP account information for that user. It didn't come back with any error, and so we're good. And those messages are coming directly from cPanel. So we're good on that. That's right. Right. If they're logging into sites at Harvard, they're not even dealing with these login credentials at all. So you might also double check and make sure that things are synced up if it's not embedding cPanel properly for some reason. You might say, okay, well, let's try changing it or whatever. Or, you know, if they changed it on their own and WHMCS has old information for some reason, that's something that we see very occasionally. So that's another thing to check.
One of the first things we will do is go into the product service and
just hit that button.
Change password to make sure that
just to make sure that, yeah. Right. So, yes.
In the previous page, that his account was pending, and that you didn't click approve order.
Right.
But in here it says it is active.
Yeah.
Two different things.
They are. So there's a lot of different items. You've got a client status, you've got an order status, and you've got a product status. Almost everything has a status assigned to it. While the order was still pending, but we have it set up in your system to where you don't have to necessarily accept orders in order for them to go through. We tell it to automatically to set up cPanel. So for the purposes of this cPanel account is active. It got created as soon as Jim hit the register button. Everything went through, but the orders just sit there as pending. So
pending and inactive. Like,
that's correct.
Even if it's pending, it could be active. And
right.
Even if it's not pending, it could be inactive.
Yes, every order. You'll never have inactive accounts if they put in an order. You shouldn't anyway, because inactive accounts should really mean they don't have anything yet. So, I mean, we'd have to.
That was not the case.
Really? Okay. Yeah, and we can double check on that. But essentially, pending, every single order that comes in is going to be pending until it's accepted. But in this. You can accept it, or they can just sit there, honestly. I mean, I've got some systems where since it's started, you might have 400 accounts orders in there, but they're generated automatically. And so, you know, you're good. Yeah. So the system is meant to be self-service. So it's just a weird quirk of WHMCS that all orders are pending until they're accepted. But we have it set up in the system to where you don't necessarily have to accept in order for it to go through, because then you'd be getting emails every time somebody went to sign up for a domain. So yeah, you've got a couple different buttons down here, change password packages. I could suspend an account. Let's say, you know, someone graduated, I'm going here and doing some cleanup, and I'm like, Jim's not supposed to be in here, but I'm going to reach out to him. And so I don't want to necessarily delete his stuff yet. I'll reach out to him, but this shouldn't be online. Let's say somebody contacts you with copyright information or whatever, you need to take it offline, but you're not going to delete anything right to start. Suspend is a great option to do there. Now that it's suspended, if I were to open up this domain, cPanel will give us the account suspended message in there. And so then you can follow up with the user, but it hasn't actually touched any of their information. All the databases are there, all the installs. If you unsuspend it, everything comes back online. So it's a nice option if you just need something to be offline for a period of time. It's a great option if you're setting up policies and you're deciding, okay, if someone graduates, we'll give them 3 months, then maybe we suspend their accounts and give them another 3 months because they may not be checking email, but they might be checking their domain. They go here and they get this message, then they might be like, yeah, what's going on? And it's like, yeah, you graduated. I had a student from Mary Washington contact me on Facebook. This is my life now. Said, my domain's not working. And I was like, all right, I'm not supposed to help you, but whatever, we'll take a look or whatever. And I look at it and I'm like, you were in the list that they removed your accounts. He was like, oh, I guess that's right. I graduated last spring, a year ago, but I used my domain professionally. And I'm like, well, you gotta move on and take ownership of it. So yeah, situations like that. But you might set up something where it's suspended for a period of time because they are checking their website, maybe not necessarily their emails. Maybe they graduate and they don't have access to their email anymore. So this might be one of the only ways that they'll notice that that's happening and reach out to you.
So
yeah.
Trickle down, like I haven't used WHMCS at all.
Right.
I've been doing everything through the WordPress admin panel.
Right.
Will this trickle down to that? Like, they'll still show up as active probably?
They're still going to show up active in WordPress. We haven't quite made the WordPress portal to where you can do everything in there.
But it's better, like I think some users might switch back to off of active in WordPress. It's better to do it here if you want to suspend their I like using WHMCS as sort of my management tool for a lot of things when it comes to managing accounts and clients and that kind of stuff in the system.
Something like change the password, yes, and using a single sign-on, like does that break that link in any way?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Nope.
Okay.
You're single sign-on. The only thing that it's happening is they're being sent off to single sign-on and logging in, and it comes back and it's matching up with their email address with their WordPress profile. So the only time we see single sign-on break is if someone gets married and their last name changes, or some schools, for whatever reason, allow students to change their email addresses just because they want to. BYU would be one of those. And so like suddenly they go to log in and they're getting a domain sign-up form again. And they're like, this makes no sense because it looks like I have a new user here. It's a different email address. So WordPress, WHMCS, a lot of these rely on the email as the unique identifier, which isn't a perfect world, but it is what it is.
You might be getting into this later, but I assume you could batch to this. Is there a way to set up for an on-page to batch suspend account?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are scripts that you can run to do it. We also, I'll just mention right off the gate, we'll be talking about exit strategies a little bit, but for a lot of our schools, you can just throw us a CSV file and we'll manage some of that for you. So if you put the policies in place, you can just send us a CSV file every semester or however often you want it to be and say, these are the accounts that need to be suspended, these are the ones that need to be terminated. So that might be a good way of rolling students off, is just set those policies in place and then you just hand us the list of accounts and we manage some of that for you. One of my long-term development goals is to hopefully create more interfaces to allow that stuff to be user serviceable as well, so that you could just upload a CSV and have it do it automatic. But with automation comes danger, right? Sometimes it never hurts to say, let's have Reclaim do that rather than me terminate every account on accident because I, missed a comma. So.
I really
Yeah.
Who has account and I know graduating, but the staff is leaving.
Yeah, the hard thing with integrating with those systems, there's a couple different reasons in which we haven't gone down that path. One is that schools hate to give that information to vendors. So it opens up a whole new ball of wax for them to say, now Reclaim knows who our active and inactive students are and that kind of thing, and who's graduated and who hasn't, you know. And so single sign-on's a lot easier because it just passes them off to their server to do that. Whereas, you know, in order to get that information, I've got to communicate and actually store that and know, okay, they graduated on this date and that. And then every school system's different. Some are using Banner, some are using Fisher, some are using something else. And it really does require that you do custom code for every single one of them. So for now, the way we handle it is just doing batch stuff with CSV files, and we can give you the reports of all the accounts that you have in there. And then hopefully the IT department has some way to say, these are the ones that are no longer with us. Jim already mentioned the resending the product welcome, so I won't go too much into that. I want to look. Emails we've mentioned as well. Let's talk a little bit more about that log, because logging is really important in WHMCS, I found. I've taken a couple actions on Jim's account already. And so you'll notice here, this isn't just the emails that went out or anything like that. It's every single thing that the WHMCS has done. So this is when I suspended it. This is when it was unsuspended. This is who did that. So if you want to set up more than one administrator, it might be a good idea to not share those accounts, because then you can track who did what. So it might be nice to be able to say, okay, it wasn't me, it was that person who terminated the account. I can follow up with them and say, what happened there? Why did you do that? Was that a mistake or something like that? If you're sharing your own WHMCS login, this is going to be the same user for everything, like it says here with Reclaim, even though some of this stuff Jim did, some I did. The only time you'll see it differently, oh no, it's even using the Reclaim account for the initial order placement stuff. So yeah, you'll see in here, new order was placed, created an invoice, marked it as paid because it's a $0 invoice. And that's an example where we don't send emails for everything. They're not going to get a $0 invoice to their email account. So we have a lot of those emails turned off in there. Module create successful. It was able to create that cPanel account. So, and this is the service ID, which is the product for that user. Email was sent to Jim. He resent the email to himself. Password was changed by me. We suspended it. So you can really get a full picture of all activity that's happened on that account within WHMCS.
So something happened recently, see it?
We can, but nothing has. The last thing I did was unsuspend the account.
I wonder though, could you refresh it?
Don't be going in my systems. I'll cut your access off. Oh, wow. Mo Peltzel terminated Jim's account. This gets dangerous. So yeah, absolutely. So here's a perfect example. And you can see IP addresses. Were they on the same network, which they were, and that kind of thing. So, so this is a great overview of what's happened. If somebody went to set up a cPanel account and that account never got set up properly, the log should absolutely say not only that it didn't get set up properly, but this will throw the exact error messages that cPanel sent back to WHMCS. So if you're not seeing it anywhere else, you should see it in the log here.
How did you get that log?
It's going to be a tab for each individual user. So if you're sitting at the summary, and because my screen's a little bit shorter, I'm not seeing everything, so I have to hit that. Yeah, if I had a nice big screen, these would be more tabs here. So as you get smaller, it comes to this drop down. Yeah, this is the log for the individual user. WHMCS does have an activity log for everything. Under utilities, logs, activity log. This gets really noisy because this is everything that's happened on the system. So right now, we're just working on Jim's account, but this is every account that's in the system, everything that's been happening, new orders being placed, all that, that's all within here. And you can search on that.
Where did you find this?
Under utilities, logs, activity logs, so right there. Yeah, and so you can search by specific dates, specific usernames. I could see just the stuff that Mo's been doing in my account. Yeah, so. Yeah, So this is weird terminology, but for WHMCS, domains are top-level domains, .coms, .net, .org, those kind of things. Subdomains are not a domain to WHMCS because it doesn't have to manage stuff like that. It doesn't have to register it with some third party or do anything. So you'll just have a product, a hosting account.
So I had somebody that did purchase a domain through your
Yeah.
It does not show up here.
That's because Reclaim has our own billing system, our own
Okay.
WHMCS.
So
So
will
we
it-
have access to it.
Will it ever show up here? Like, how would it-
No, because we keep the system separate. So yeah, it's because they're going to reclaimhosting.com to buy something, they're going to be in our billing system, and your stuff's just going to be the stuff that you all manage.
Add in a non-college user as to another university taking a class, and could you add it here and then they can.
Where I would add that is in WordPress, and then you would give them the non-single sign-on link to get into the site. So if they're outside of Bryn Mawr, you're going to give them the WP login.php, but you're going to create a manual WordPress account, and the first time they log in, WHMCS will create a profile for them. And that connection will happen automatically in the background. So as long as they can get into WordPress, everything else can happen automatically if they're outside your university.
And actually, this is a good, I failed to mention it, and Carol and Luke brought it to my attention. One of the things to think about, we talked about WHMCS, and usually logging into WHMCS happens at your domain /manage/WHMCS-admin. So we have a very kind of systematic way we set up where WHMCS lives. And if you want to get to the WHM server, that's usually your school name .reclaimhosting.com:2087. So I realized I didn't mention that when we talked about it, but every system has a pretty kind of standard URL we use, right? So Colgate.reclaimhosting.com:2087 will get you into WHM. For example, Colgate.domains/manage/WHMCS-admin, and I can write this down and expect anyone to remember it. Those are all pretty standard how you would get into each of those systems. So I didn't mention that, but Cheryl, I just wanted to reiterate. There are, if you're like, how do I get into WHM? Let us know, and we can show you directly. So I should say.
No, that's good. Let's look at some other tools that are available, not just from the individual user's profile, but as a whole here. So you've got products and services, shared hosting. Shared hosting is going to be those hosting accounts. WHMCS has the capability to do a whole lot more, with other systems, but this is the only thing, shared hosting, that you're going to do. So this is every hosting account on the system, as well as their statuses. So canceled means that those were terminated. We change their status to canceled after their trial is up on State U. For example, you'll have a lot of active accounts in here. If you do have graduates that you've eventually terminated, you might have statuses in there. I can filter this if I want to. So if I want to say, I really only just want to see active, I can filter based on that, and now I'm only seeing active accounts in there. Or I could search for a specific one. So I could say client name, and this search will work, even if it's, oh geez, do I have to go with the full? Oh, he's not active. That's why I didn't find it. So that's right, somebody terminated you. So I was like, yeah. So if I just search the last name, I could search by the domain name. So the search works really well in there. So in this context, pending means the account did not get created, because we're talking about products here and not orders. So if a product is pending, most likely their cPanel account did not get created for some reason, and it's just sitting there. So that's where you would want to go in and try to create it and see if there's any error coming back or anything like that. Maybe you pushed it through manually outside of WHMCS, and so the status in WHMCS just hasn't been updated. But I like to work mostly in WHMCS just to make sure that things are active.
The terminology is important, right?
Yeah.
Because you're right. The status for the product is pending, but if you even look above, at the top, 142 pending orders.
Right.
This is where Tim said, like, everything that comes through is an order. And so when you log into WHMCS, you might see right away, like, 400 pending orders. Doesn't matter. They're just orders that will sit there and you can make them active or not. It's the product, whether it's active or
Uh-huh.
When I see a list of people that under services, I have 0 and 1 and 2 and 3,
Okay.
like various ones. So is that the service, the number of
The numbers?
I don't really understand the number of services.
Number of services.
Right there.
Where are you seeing the number?
Oh, it's under the client.
It's under the clients. Yeah. So this is just the quick speak for WHMCS to be how many hosting accounts and how many domains they have. Usually you'll see 1, 0. That's what the majority of your users should be.
3, that means that person does 3 domains?
That's right. Yeah. So go into their ID and you should see they maybe like there was a typo or something, or yeah. And that's where you would want to follow up and go, which of these is the correct one? Yeah, so it looks like she got more than 1 domain, but 1 hosting account. So yeah, and it may be that like she hit the back button somewhere and then more than 1 thing got added to the cart or something. So yeah.
What would they use if it was a pending?
They will either see a white page or a cPanel login that said they could not log in.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'll be one of those 2, depending on the code. But yeah, this essentially means how many hosting accounts and domains do we have in the system? That's what they consider services. So, and how many are active.
So, as Mo brought up, you could still terminate an account and it'd still be there. So in WHMCS, what had happened when it terminated the account, it will no longer be on WHM. It will no longer be an account on the cPanel server, but there still will be a record of it on WHMCS. And one of the things that Tim pointed out, which I think is really important, is WHMCS don't delete those records because they become a record for your school to track what happened to a particular account. So keep that and use that as much as possible. As you get more people going through and time passes, you won't remember. So that being a place to track that would be useful.
Yeah, we're, you know, in terms of like your licensing and stuff like that, we're not looking at any numbers in WHMCS. We're looking at active hosting accounts on the server. So WHMCS is your history of everything that happened. If someone graduated, you had to terminate their account, keep it all in here so that you're able to, you know, if you later want to follow up with those users or something, you've got that data. If you need to find out if somebody says, you know, I've had people who graduated and then 6 months later they went to work for the university and something got lost in the mix and their account got deactivated or something. You want to have that paper trail there to be able to go back to and figure out what might have happened. We had one school who was, as they were graduating and leaving, they would go in and they would just delete these clients from WHMCS. Well, at that point, you have no information to go off of. That, you know, that could be, even if the domain was still active somewhere and the hosting account was online, you wouldn't really have the tools to know like where it was living. Is it on your server? Did they move to reclaim? What's going on? So yeah, I wouldn't delete a whole lot of stuff in WHMCS. You can run those module commands to suspend and terminate, and it's communicating with those external systems. But leaving the stuff here is good.
Terminate when you use it.
Correct. Yeah.
How about suspended?
Suspended, it's still taking up space, yes, because all the data still lives on the server. Suspended just means I want it to be offline. So I want them to get an error message of some kind when they go to the website, but all that, if I need to bring it back online, it's a one-click button to unsuspend.
Eventually one.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. It's usually a good process to do 2 steps, suspend and then terminate, just so, you know, it's easier if there was an error for any reason to unsuspend versus having to pull a backup or hope there's a backup or something like that and be in those situations.
So Tim, I see WHMCS and it says it's active. It says it's suspended.
Okay.
How do the 2 systems kind of communicate that status?
So WHM doesn't talk back to WHMCS. So what happened there is somebody suspended in WHM and didn't know about this system at all. And so WHMCS is just assuming things are still hunky-dory. But yeah, so
what this is a create a faculty actually demonstration of installing WordPress Portal. And somebody checks to see like whether this is a legitimate account.
Right.
So they suspend that thing. What's the bet? And maybe this is a question for future or a later
Mhm.
Thinking about what the best way is to create that account so that it doesn't get suspended, or maybe you just have to do it that way. You know,
Right.
It's going to go away and we're going to reset it anyway. So maybe the best way to create the account, then reset it for the next time. So it's available as a faculty field and choose your domain on the screen.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the key thing there is most of the work you want to be doing is actually in WHMCS, because that can communicate out and do stuff versus
But it's
doing it in
scary.
WHM.
You
It
know, more
is.
tabs,
Yeah.
more-
there is a lot there, but there's a lot actually, once you get into WHMCS, there's actually a lot you can ignore because it does way more than we even need to take advantage of for our purposes. So, but yeah, because it actually would only be a few clicks for me to cancel an order and then delete an order, and that terminates the hosting account. And the next time you log in, you get to sign up again. And so, yeah, if I went to that view order screen, canceling it would actually cancel out that order, and then deleting it would remove it. And that actually runs the terminate commands for you and everything. So it's a quick process to basically reset an account so that they get the sign up again next time. There's a mass mail tool in here. I mentioned previously, let's say you want to send an email out to all of your active users. This is a great way to do it. One thing that I really like as a feature of this, not only can you filter by certain things before you compose the message, but it'll also like send out 25 at a time. So you don't like get seen as a spammer sending out 500 emails and the first 100 go through and then you get 400 bounce backs into your email client. So it's kind of useful for that. But let's say I wanted to go in here and I want to send an email to only people who have active products. So I can do that. I'll do, this has more than one type of product service. These are different hosting plans. You probably just have one. We want their hosting account to be active. And even if they have more than one hosting account, we're just going to do one. So if I go here to compose a message, you can see it's going to send this to 320 people. Who is this guy? Yeah, I know, right? So it's going to send it to 320 people. I can choose a subject. Here's what's great about this. So it's not the best webmail client in the world, in terms of composing a message, but we have mail merge fields. And you can pull stuff. You can pull their client information, first and last name. You can pull their domain name. So you can say, hey, Tim, I noticed that your domain is a year old, and that kind of stuff. You can actually put the actual information for themselves in there. So you can drop any of these merge tags directly into the email, and it will replace it with the specific information for that user. So kind of a useful tool. And again, those emails that you're then sending out are logged in WHMCS. So it's a good tool for communicating out to your user base in general. Probably one of the better tools versus, I don't think WHM has anything, and WordPress, you'd have to add third-party plugins to do mass mailing, and it just doesn't handle it really well. So, and you can see here, there's those settings, send 25 emails every 30 seconds. So it kind of
really can't distinguish between who is active.
exactly, yeah. WordPress.
would not be included.
No, WordPress, again, is going to be where you've got everybody who ever logged in. And so WHMCS actually knows who's got hosting accounts, who's active in my system, and who's not. Yep.
Is this just under mass mail? I don't have as many of the options.
You don't? Okay. Maybe we didn't give you all the permissions. Yeah, this is under Clients Mass Mail Tool. So Clients Mass Mail Tool, I'll go back here. So the first thing you have to do is build out what kind of email you want to send. So you get this first. And then once you go to compose a message, then it gives you the options. They're not underneath here? Okay. Yeah, we can definitely take a look at that.
Now that you didn't select like general, suppose that you don't get those options.
So another thing that I want to another thing I want to look at in here is reporting. Again, A lot of reporting is going to be billing related. You're going to see stuff like income forecasting and that kind of thing. You can ignore some of that. But where it does hold up really well is if you just need a CSV file of all of your hosting accounts or something, you can go down here under exports. So, and this is under reports more. So I skip all of the ones that they've created since it's more income related. If you go to more, you get all the reports that they have. And so there's clients, domains. I'm not doing top level domains. These are all subdomains, so I can ignore that. But services is another one. So let's say I need a CSV file that's going to give me every active hosting account in the system. So there are other places I could probably get it, but I'm going to do it in here. So I'm going to do an export of services, and I can choose what fields that I want to have in here. So I want my CSV file to have the client's name. I want it to have their domain name, which in this context is going to be like the subdomains, and maybe their username and password for whatever reason. And I'll filter it based on their status being active. So I'll only get active there. This gives me a CSV file of exactly what I wanted. Usernames, passwords, the actual domain names, and if I scroll down to the bottom, or wait, is it at the top? Oh, where's my save button? Oh, all the way up there. Export to CSV. So, sorry, it's up at the top. They moved it. It used to be at the bottom of the page. But you go up to Tools, Export to CSV, and I can grab that as a file. So if you need a CSV file with specific information, that can be a useful way to do it. If you just need client account information, email addresses, first and last name for anybody who is active in your system, that would be a good way to do that. This is under Reports More. So that will give you all the reports in the system. And at the bottom, you have exports for clients and services are the two that you're going to use mostly.
So at the bottom, you go to services?
Yes.
Or clients?
Yeah, if you're dealing with hosting accounts, you're going to do services. If you're dealing with like user information, clients is probably going to be the best there. So
And domains.
again, WHMCS is top level domain registrations when they say domains for the most part.
Password is a username and password.
Yep.
Right.
That's what it will give you.
Yep, that would be their FTP information. Other utilities that are in here, I mentioned logs. Activity log is going to be the big one. That'll show you every log, every activity that's happened on the server. cPanel WHM import is kind of interesting. Let's say like you have been creating some accounts in WHM, or you kind of want to see whether or not there's any discrepancies in there. I like this because it'll communicate with your server and say, are there any accounts that exist there that don't exist here, or vice versa. So if I click Get Account List, I've only got one server, so this dropdown is just a single one. But if I click Get Account List, all of these accounts are on the server, but it color codes a couple of them. And all the way at the bottom, it's got the legend here. And so it'll indicate, once this gets down here, which ones have different products on the server than what's on WHMCS, which ones don't even exist in WHMCS and they do on the server. So if there's any discrepancies, it's going to show it in here. So this can be a kind of nice way to see this list is coming directly from your server, what exists on your server versus what's in WHMCS. And there may be, for whatever reason, some discrepancies. These color codes are just that the hosting account's been changed on the server directly for some reason. The last thing, and then I'm going to jump off of WHMCS, is email templates. We talked a little bit about emails. The hosting account welcome email is by default the only email that we set up for you. And it's just contains basic information, welcome to the project, yada, yada, yada. You can customize those, but you can customize others as well. So you'll see these in here. The ones that are grayed out with an X are disabled. And so you'll see a whole lot of disabled stuff in here. If I go to this hosting account welcome email and click on it, I can actually edit that template. And this interface is going to be very similar to that mass mail tool. You'll have those merge tags that you can use. So you can very much customize it depending on the type of email. Now, you're not, here's where it's an interesting thing. If you're creating a product email, you're not going to be able to get certain types of information. All the emails can get client information, but if you're creating a client email, you're not going to know what hosting accounts or domains they have and that kind of thing. So you may have a different list of the merge tags at the bottom here, in other words, depending on the type of email that you're sending. But for the most part, product emails are the most useful ones. Those are going to show up in the drop-down under the product tab. Those are going to have the information like their domain, the status on it, you know, when they signed up, information like that. But so this is the account that goes out, the email that goes out, and you can see, congratulations, service domain is now live. You know, you see the merge tags for the individual stuff, and this is replaced with the actual information. I can edit this. I can choose who it's coming from. I can add CCs to it. If you want to CC someone else on all those emails, I have one school where the guy likes to get an email every time someone signs up. Don't ask me why, you know, but you can do that kind of stuff. So you can do that. You can also create your own templates. Now, keep in mind, creating a template doesn't mean it's going to be automated in any fashion. So you can create a migration email, but WHMCS isn't going to, like, you know, handle your whole migration process. But if you have the template in there, then you can use the mass mail tool to say, I want you to use my migration template and send it to these 500 people. And it'll still fill in everything. So if you're going to reuse stuff, create a template for it anyway. So that's right up here at the top. You choose what type of email. Like I said, product service is probably going to be the best one. General messages mostly just get client information. They don't get product information. So I might go in here and I might say trial ended, since we're on state U. Same interface now, but the email's blank and I can start filling it out. And I've got all these tags that I can use to build that out. And once I've created that, that'll be in the drop down on the product tab for the individual user. I can send that email directly to one person. It'll be available in the mass mail tool as a template that I can send to multiple people. So good option there to customize both the existing emails that you have and create new ones for folks. Yes?
That email address is there, it's word@state.org.
Uh-huh.
I've got something similar on mine. If users reply to that or send mail to that address, is there a way to see, is that just?
WHMCS is never going to see those because WHMCS doesn't receive email. So it's going to be the individual client. So I would usually best practice there is going to be to set up a group mailbox that you're connecting to, but it's using IMAP or something so that more than one person could potentially connect to it. I've got some people who will use a forwarder so it goes to multiple people or they're managing it in ways like that. But all that stuff happens outside of the system because it's not receiving the email back. It's not as good as sort of a general purpose support tool in that sense.
Right now it's sort of like.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And most of our schools will set it up so the email it's coming from is something to where the email's coming back will either go to the help desk or the project manager or a group. So, and you might set up support@whittier.domains or something like that, and then have those emails get forwarded on to who it needs to go to so that there's some central email that's not your own. And then if you leave the university for whatever reason, you know, then you've got to, you know, people start responding to emails a year later or something like that. It happens. So other questions before we move on from WHMCS?
There's something called a notification message.
Good question. Let's look back.
And that's
Under-
another one that's active.
I wonder if that's a notification of like a.
So I think the situation with that is WHMCS in newer versions has added more templates, and we disabled all of them, but then when they add new ones, those are active. However, they're probably not being sent unless there's any particular notification. Notifications is a new feature of WHMCS in more recent versions. So yeah, I mean, you could disable it if you want to. I'm not sure off the bat what that notification does. I think there's a general purpose notification system that allows you to get an email when X happens. Let's say an order fails, or, you know, like it's actually a nice system, but I haven't played with it much yet. If you want to get messages to Slack every time you get a new order, they now have built-in ways to do that. And so it's a whole notification system where it's almost like an if this, then that kind of thing. And so that email template is probably a general purpose. When it needs to send a notification via email, what should that email include? So.
Other question. Okay, let's take a
Yeah.
like a 2 or 3 minute break, just so you can recycle your brain, and then we're gonna go into WHM.
We encourage you to stand and stretch.
That's right.